Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano,
And I'm Matt Finney.
and this is the Bad News Network. Nature decided to mess with Texas this week, and man, did it do a number. At least 16 Texans have died, 13.5 million have had water disruptions from frozen pipes, 725 systems are under boil water advisories, and over 3 million homes have been out of power for 72 hours or more. Texan homes are not prepared for this kind of cold, so the lack of power has also led to busted pipes, destroyed walls, and even icicles forming on ceiling fans, stoves, and cabinets. I've spoken to a number of people on the ground, and it really is a shit show. A lot of people are joking about this, but it is really that bad. Even some of my friends that have backups to their backups are having a very rough time. Propane tanks have frozen. Wells have frozen. HVAC systems have frozen. Generators have run out of fuel and gas stations are out as well. And people that aren't prepared are having a hell of a time. There isn't any food in most grocery stores anymore. Blankets have all been bought out. Generators are sold out. There are many stories of people who haven't eaten in days, or if they have, it hasn't been a hot meal. Naturally, politicians have made this worse. Democrats are dunking on Texas, reminding Republicans that when California faced power outages, they were mocked for not being prepared. The whole thing has me aggravated. I have a real problem when parties pretend the other side is incompetent and the reason for all of the world's problems, when they've both proved time and time again that they both are completely and totally incompetent. Look no further than Biden's inability to get buy-in on his stimulus plan when his party literally controls every house of government. He's arguing with himself and is still having trouble getting it done. But what really bothers me is that once again, a lot of people are suffering, and I've got AOC saying it's because of a lack of a Green New Deal, which is patently false, and I've got Crenshaw over here saying it's because of an over-reliance on wind energy, which is patently false. There's holes in everyone's game. Wind doesn't create enough energy, and when it gets cold, the batteries hold less energy. We also cannot indefinitely rely on a finite resource in fossil fuels. Great conversation to have. After the fucking crisis is over. What you want to see when everything goes to shit is leadership. I want politicians working together to get hot food, shelter, heat, water, medical care, and whatever the hell else is needed to Texas. We don't need whataboutisms. We don't need blame throwing. We don't need dunking on Twitter. We don't need any of that bullshit. We need to keep Texans from dying, and we need to help rebuild the systems that are critical and broken. And then we need to dig into what the hell happened and fix it and punish people accordingly. There are lots of reasons to be upset with officials in government and in private industry for Texas. The grid wasn't winterized for this kind of storm because they basically never happen here. So even though there were many warnings that this could happen, everyone was content to play fast and loose with it. ERCOT, the nonprofit that runs the state's power grid, informed the governor 5 days before the storm that everything was ready to go and there wouldn't be any major issues. Turns out, that was wishful thinking. They literally failed every single measure they said they had taken. Everything they said would work did not work. And they're patting themselves on the back because they shut down the power early, which potentially saved the grid from being completely destroyed. Hey, nice job, dickheads. This is kind of like being a firefighter and seeing a waste paper fire, and everyone's warning you that there's a waste paper fire, and you could easily put it out, but instead you just hope it never tips over and spreads, and then when it does and burns down 5 buildings while you watched it, you decide to put the fire out finally, and then want a parade in your honor. No, asshole. Your job was to do something about it before it was a f***ing problem. And it's not just them. Tons of politicians in the state legislature, federal legislature, and in the state executive had access to this information and just ignored it because they didn't think it would ever happen. Hope is a f***ing terrible plan. Governor Abbott himself admitted that he had not done enough to ensure ERCOT executed on its tasks and took responsibility for both what had happened and what will happen to improve going forward. All right, cool. Taking responsibility, that's a great step. I'll give it a golf clap. Let's see what the other leaders from Texas are doing. Oh my God, Ted Cruz is in Cancun. Don't downplay it. It's not okay. When you're a leader, you have to be in the shit. You can't view it from a distance. You have to be there. You have to suffer alongside your constituents, especially when you're one of the only people that could be pulling strings and making calls to help people. It isn't an issue of bad optics. This is simply bad leadership on Cruz's part. Here's to hoping Abbott presents some great leadership in the coming days and gets the state moving back in the right direction. There are some things you can't control, like once-in-a-decade storms. There are other things you can, like preparing for those storms so the hits aren't quite as bad. There are a lot of Texans that need a respite, and I hope it comes quickly. God bless Texas.
The movement to recall Gavin Newsom has achieved the 1.5 million signatures needed for the recall vote. They still have until mid-March to continue gathering other signatures in anticipation that Newsom will discount or invalidate some of the other votes. Meanwhile, Newsom has taken to trying to bribe the entire state by coming out with a flash stimulus package of $600, which doesn't even cover rent in California. Noticeably missing from his recovery package, though, is the reopening of California schools, which he has allegedly been working on this whole time.
Last week, we reported on Tessica Brown, the woman who gorilla glued her hair because she ran out of hairspray, which is, of course, what you do in that situation. After hearing about the incident, a Louisiana man decided that he was stronger than the adhesive and would prove that Tessica was exaggerating. The man promptly glued his top lip to a red Solo cup while on Facebook Live. The fact that it was a red Solo cup leads me to believe this guy wasn't sober. In fact, I hope he was bombed out of his gourd. The Louisiana man was taken to the hospital hours later, where the doctor slowly and painfully peeled the cup from his lip. According to the doctor, depending on how the healing process goes, he may need to amputate the top of his lip. Remember the mannequin challenge where everyone would just stand still and see who could do that the best? I miss those days. Those were simpler times when we didn't have to deal with people putting the most powerful adhesive available to the public on their bodies. To add to encouragement to stupidity, people donated $23,893 to Tessica Brown for her Gorilla Glue incident. So in case you thought hard work was the means to financial stability, just know you were wrong. And the answer is to be dumb enough to glue your body parts to things so that even dumber people can donate to your cause.
More news on the Mayama Coup, it's still going. The current ruling party has issued a year-long state of emergency. They also deny it was a coup, even when the protesters took to the streets in support of our protagonist, Miss Suu Kyi. Speaking of the League of Evil, they also denied that the Nobel Prize winner was in detention, but confirmed that she was in her home for security while the law took its course. And of course, ever the evil mastermind, China has denied all accusations of assisting in the military coup. The fact that they had to deny it is pretty telling. Anger and concern arose this week when the story of police investigating a woman in Florida over a Facebook post broke. Last Friday, Florida resident Angelique Contreras received a visit from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. The reason for their visit was a Facebook post which Contreras had made earlier that week. Local business owners have been frustrated by the shutdowns in their county, and a town hall meeting was planned to allow people to voice their concerns. A number of those people had medical exemptions from actually wearing a mask. To counter this, the county reportedly planned to relegate those people to the basement of a parking garage, where they would then video call in to the live meeting. Contreras, a salon owner, and another local business owner vented their frustrations on Facebook on a thread. The other owner, Anthony Collins, asked when the other business owners were going to make the politicians' lives uncomfortable by doing things like crashing wedding parties and the etc. He stated that he'd like to dump garbage on her lawn, implying a county commissioner, to which Contreras replied, "Thousands of masks." Palm Beach County Officer Horton, dressed in plain clothes, 2 uniformed accompanying officers, and a social worker arrived at Contreras' door at 10:30 p.m. on the night of the 12th. Contreras videoed the exchange on her phone, and in it asked for the identification of Horton, who appears to just say, "What do you want, a badge, a gun, handcuffs?" Horton states that they were there because of the Facebook post that Contreras made indicating that she planned to trespass and deface property. Contreras denied inciting a crime and then pled the fifth. Horton basically shrugged it off and then proceeded to leave. She followed, asking for names and badges of all members present. The officers obliged but declined to give the identity of an accompanying female who Palm Beach PD identified to BNN as a therapist or social worker. BNN followed up on this story with Palm Beach PD, who issued the statement, "The protocol of the sheriff's office is to respond to all threats of potential criminal activity in an effort to prevent it from happening. The Behavioral Services Unit response, in addition, can determine if in fact the people involved in making the threats may need some type of mental health services. All of this is to prevent crime from happening and get people the help they need, with the end result of not having to arrest people and place them in jail." BNN also received transcripts of the investigation encounters with both Contreras and Collins, which we had two of our veteran police officers review. Both reached similar thoughts and conclusions on the events. First, on the encounter, the way Officer Horton was dressed out of uniform and baggy clothes would not elicit immediate cooperation from either of them. This wasn't helped by the lack of succinctness in identifying himself. You're setting yourself up for conflict. The elements of a crime are hazy, to put it lightly. Was this woman a known entity to the police department? Did she have a criminal history? It doesn't appear that way, but those are unconfirmed. When it came to not identifying the accompanying female, the officers did not have an obligation to ID her unless she was acting as an agent of the state. Many social workers don't. Meaning, only if she had the power to deny Contreras her freedom is she considered an actual agent of the state. On to the investigations as a whole. Posting your thoughts in a public forum constitutes in plain view as a scenario. For example, having a brick of heroin laying out in your car seat when an officer walks by. That officer doesn't need you to run a red light to conduct an investigation. So again, posting in a public online forum, it's out there for everyone to see. That being said, the conversation was clearly hypothetical and indicated no harm towards an individual. There was no evidence of a crime, and as both our BNN experts agreed, you don't investigate something to see if it could be a crime, you investigate a crime. For the department to commit those resources, 3 officers and a social worker, it seems overzealous on their part. Which brings us to the conclusion that this whole thing reeks of intimidation and nothing more. It's the police and the county commissioner saying, "Yeah, we saw your Facebook post and we're just here to say, we're watching you and we can reach out and f*** your life up." That's not the kind of protect and serve our guys here at BNN are about. Bottom line, don't post public things on public forums and act surprised when they elicit a reaction. And to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department from our fellow veteran boys in blue, if you've got that little to do and you're gonna send those guys out for a Facebook post, you're not working hard enough to catch actual bad guys.
The European Space Agency has announced it will begin recruiting new astronauts for the first time in 11 years. With their new recruitment process, they will be actively seeking out more diverse candidates, specifically women, as Europeans have only sent up 2 in the agency's history, as well as people with disabilities. This announcement comes on the heels of SpaceX and NASA's launch of a raffle to send private citizens to space. All you have to do is win a game of high-intensity bingo, and you get to be an astronaut. This definitely sounds like a space Hunger Games. May the odds be ever in your favor. I would totally watch that, by the way.
2021 is keeping with its tradition of using any means necessary to manipulate an outcome until it fits your narrative. Nancy Pelosi announced this week, following Trump's impeachment acquittal, that lawmakers would be forming their own independent investigation to review the facts and causes related to the Capitol mob of January 6th. She has also employed retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore in an effort to determine where Capitol security needs to be bolstered. Pelosi stated it's clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth of how this happened. At this point, after a trial which she tried to slam through Congress and now forming her own investigation after not achieving the preferred outcome, her use of the words facts and truth are looking pretty ironic. Pelosi also stated that Congress needed to allocate funds to provide safety for the members of the Capitol. So why even bother with the bogus investigation if you're just already saying that you're going to take money for your protection? The Dems now look to be speeding down the same road that they've been admonishing Trump for taking at this point, and it's all looking pretty disconcerting. There's a laundry list of pressing concerns that demand this country's attention, and these asshats are still playing Russian collusion version 4.0. But who knows? Maybe the people without power in Texas, the kids not going to school, the small businesses forced to close, or the people unable to pay rent are really just aching to find out how your second or fifth or whatever super secret double probation investigation is going to turn out. We'll all go buy some popcorn with our $2,000 stimulus checks and kick back and watch with bated breath.
The Democrats are coming for your guns. With the lack of any large-scale recent firearms tragedy to draw from, the White House saw fit to prostitute the Parkland school shooting once again as the reason to ban every semi-automatic, every magazine accepting, and every multiple round housing firearm. In a statement posted by the president, he says, "I am calling on Congress to enact common sense gun law reforms, including requiring background checks on all gun sales, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and eliminating immunity for gun manufacturers who knowingly put weapons of war on our streets." If this is enacted, we also expect to see car manufacturers held responsible when their owners commit DUIs in them. Honestly, this is a weird flex at a time when gun ownership in both parties has gone up significantly, and approval for gun ownership has increased to its highest levels in decades. With the Democrats holding both houses, this is going to come down to whether or not a handful of blue dog Democrats in the Senate are willing to kick the Second Amendment to the curb. This one might get ugly. We shall see.
Rigoberto Lopez has been arrested by New York authorities, concluding a manhunt after New York City subway stabbing sprees began last Friday. Lopez apparently had been targeting homeless people on or around the NYC A train. Two of his victims survived and are currently recovering in the hospital, while two of the others died, one on site and one later in the hospital care. Residents expressed relief that the New York subway slasher had been apprehended, as the spree had everyone on edge.
Last week, we reported that New York Governor Cuomo and his staff lied and withheld the actual COVID nursing home death stats. This week, Cuomo addressed these, facts during a press conference. In it, he apologized to absolutely no one and said his people were really busy and probably should have gotten around to getting those numbers out the door, but did not. Lesson learned, mea not that culpa, yada yada. Translation, my orders and handling of the COVID crisis resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of people, which I hid and lied about, and you all can go f*** yourselves. Have New Yorkers done anything or spoken out against this? No, they haven't. So as usual, no one cares, nothing will happen. I wish I had a joke to end this with. It's kind of awkward.
The Mars Rover Perseverance has officially landed on Mars. It's taken 6 months to get to the point of launch, and it finally made its touchdown this week, and NASA is ecstatic. The 1-ton rover will begin a month of procedural checkups and uploads for its software, and then begin its 15-mile course across Mars, which will take possibly years. Scientists are excited, and they say the wait is worth it, as this will be the most information we will ever get from Mars. The rover also has a small helicopter attached to it, which can do 20-second flights, will have to keep itself warm and power itself during the day. The hope is that this Mars rover will actually help us find ancient life on Mars and possibly say hi to the aliens if they're around. Side note, our own Hollywood Herd actually held one of the cameras that is on that rover, and he says it's really cool. One of the main purposes for the mission is to see if it's possible to convert the carbon dioxide from Mars's surface into oxygen, which would help us create jet fuel on the surface of the planet and possibly create oxygen for future missions. Next stop, terraforming. We all just want to say good luck, and we're all counting on you, to the Red Rover.
Rush Limbaugh passed away this week at the age of 70. Whether you loved him or hated him, he is one of the most consequential figures of the last 50 years. Limbaugh called himself an entertainer, but his entertainment did much to set the tone for Republican politics and policies for at least the last 30 years. At the height of his power, he drew tens of millions of listeners every show, and in 2001, Mike Pence went so far as to say that the only reason he and many others were elected into Congress was off the back of Limbaugh's show. Limbaugh had a clarity to his messages that gave Republicans a blueprint off of which to form their own platforms. He mobilized a lot of disenfranchised voters to move to the Republican Party and get active in voting and politics. But he was no saint. While many valued his point of view, he was as much a shock jock as he was anything else. He was absolutely despised by many liberals, and perhaps with good reason. He would regularly insult anyone from the other side, even mocking Michael J. Fox for his Parkinson's when he supported a Democratic candidate. He mocked President Obama in a manner that can only be described as overtly racist, even writing a jingle about him that I will not mention on this show. And he routinely referred to women he disagreed with as hoes, feminazis, and a whole lot more. You either loved him or hated him. There was almost no in between. But what very few could argue is that his brand of oratory launched a new era of conservative thought, which led to more radio stars, which led to more edutainment hosts on both the conservative and liberal sides of the aisle. His life changed the way we receive editorial news, likely permanently, for better or for worse. Florida restaurant owner Louis Younglove, owner of Chi-Town Italian beef and hot dogs, was arrested after authorities discovered he was selling more than just hot dogs and sausages. After months of investigating, authorities busted the meat stick slingers for peddling pounds of cocaine, marijuana, edible THC, fentanyl, ecstasy, Xanax, oxycodone, hydrocodone, and Adderall. When police attempted to arrest Younglove, he allegedly fled in his car, making it only a few feet before slamming into a parked undercover vehicle. Residents expressed shock over the upending of their favorite street meat station. Many were quoted as saying, "The food there was downright addicting." When questioned as to why he decided to run a drug operation out of his shop, Younglove explained that business owners had to be innovative and offer more variety in order to get by during the pandemic. That's sausage wisdom, if I've ever heard it. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and I hope you have a great weekend. As always, you can get 25% off at rangerup.com when you use the code BNN. Take care.